Good to have you all. Let's get started because I personally can't wait. So today we're talking about artificial intelligence, casual Tuesday conversation with the club. And specifically, we're talking about the potential of artificial intelligence to do something wonderful and solve problems within human health and women's health. And I hope today that we can get a little bit from theory into some practical questions about implementing AI technology and maybe bust some myths, get real, and have a very, kind of cool-headed, practical conversation about artificial intelligence. As you're dropping in, as I mentioned, say hi and tell us what you do. And also feel free to use the chat for questions. For those of you that are new to our community, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. You're also very welcome. But for those of you who are new, I'm just going to quickly explain what FemTech Lab is and how you can engage with us in the future. So FemTech Lab is a global ecosystem of innovators in women's health. Our mission is to improve lives of women globally, and we do that by accelerating and supporting the most disruptive, forward-thinking, and cutting-edge founders and products in women's health. Twice a year, we run an accelerator program. Aliya was part of our cohort a year ago, and the program was supported by our entire FemTech Lab ecosystem, which includes over 200 world-class experts, successful founders in women's health and health tech, and it's also supported by over 300 investment partners, so angels and VCs that are all excited about women's health and are looking for new innovators and founders to back. If you're interested in applying, I know there's quite a few founders here today. We do have a new cohort that's launching next fall, and applications will open soon. So go over to our website and make sure you're on the waiting list so you'll be the first to hear. I think Kate is going to drop a link in the chat for you to find that quickly. So enough about FemTech Lab. Welcome, everyone. I hope to have you with us after this webinar for a while. Back to talking about AI. As I said, we have an incredible panel today. I would love to introduce each one of you to the audience and tell them about your background, and I think we're going to have a fabulous conversation. First of all, we've got Rachael Dovey. I hope I pronounce everyone's name correctly. Tell me if not.
Yeah, I inherited this name, so I go with Dovey.
Okay. So Rachael is the Director of Business Development at Skin Analytics, which is a medtech company that uses AI as a medical device for skin cancer detection. It is live with the NHS, which is a huge achievement, and has seen over 40,000 patients. Thanks for joining.
Hi, excited to be here.
Cool. Next, we've got Martin Raison. Is that correct? I know you're French, so
yes.
I thought I'd add.
That's great.
Yeah. Martin is the co-founder and CTO of Nabla, which is an AI assistant that makes doctors more efficient. And Nabla's quite big ambition is to revolutionize the tools used by medical professionals every day. Martin is also an ex-research engineer at Facebook AI. So that's very impressive. So excited to hear your insights as well.
Thank you, and happy to be here as well.
Thank you. Next, we have Melissa Siah, who I know as Mel for many, many years now. We've worked together in the past, we've been friends for many years, and to me, Mel is the person that I text when I read something new about AI, and I ask her, what do you think? So now Mel is the co-founder of Syntacog, which is a regulatory tech startup that is making compliance simple for health, medtech, and other regulated businesses through automation, through using AI. And Mel is particularly passionate about combining law and artificial intelligence. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And last, but definitely not least, Aliya, Grig, one of FemTech Lab alum startups. She's the founder and CEO of Evolwe AI, a deep tech company that is creating the first empathetic AI for human-like interactions and personalized experience. It's basically teaching AI how to be empathetic, which is very important with everything that's happening in the world today. And Aliya is also conducting research in AGI. AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, for those who haven't heard the term before. And she's building artificial consciousness. Again, casual Tuesday conversations here. Cool.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So, and as I said, as we go through the conversation, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll try to get as much of them answered. Okay, Mel, let's start with you. I want to start by posing a question for you. Could you help kick us off by talking about the primary use cases for AI in health and women's health? What are the different ways in which AI can be applied when it comes to solving challenges in human health?
This is a super broad topic, so I'm only going to touch on the highest level things. But I do want to say that, as part of our work, we work with, probably 60 or so startups. And it's been so exciting to see how many of them are using AI in these really amazing ways in the health space, and particularly in women's health. So you have, your very traditional thing that people will think about when you're thinking about AI is, of course, the diagnosis space. And, you'll think about some sort of radiology or imaging, and that being run through an AI system to detect cancer or perhaps some anomalies that bear further investigation. The other thing that AI is particularly good at doing, and is not, particularly possible for humans to do, is to identify patterns and anomalies in vast amounts of data. So what we're seeing now is with wearables, with the sensors that you have in the medical space, you're getting lots and lots of data. In ICU, you generate terabytes of data each day as someone's in the ICU, but a human could never look at all that data and analyze it, let alone pick up a subtle anomaly that's, giving a hint of something that's going to come, perhaps a deterioration in their clinical state. So it's really exciting to see people starting to build these systems that can do that automatically, can keep track of all that data and detect those otherwise unseen anomalies. The other thing that we're seeing that I'm super excited about is the whole personalized and precision medicine space. So I don't know about you, but one of the things that annoyed me most as a young woman was when I went to the doctor and I said, I'd like to go on the pill. And they said, oh, great. Well, here's the first one. Try that. Here's the cheapest one. Actually, that's the one they started with, and said, try that and see if it works. And I'm like, what do you mean if it works? And they're like, oh, sometimes there's side effects and, you might not like it. See how it goes. And as it turned out, that did not go well. And so I went back and said, that didn't work. Now what? And they said, oh, here's another one. Try that. And so I found it extremely frustrating that this is the state of the art still in gynecology. There are people working on this, I'm so glad to tell you. But yeah, that ability to predict what kind of treatment, what kind of medication will actually be effective for you based on your genetics, based on your medical history, your social background, lifestyle, and so on. That's a really exciting thing, both because, you're going to stop wasting people's time. But also, when you get that treatment earlier, obviously you get better health outcomes. So the third big area that we're seeing really big at the moment with AI is patient monitoring. So this goes all the way from very simple systems where you're tracking your symptoms with some sort of diary, and then, over time, the AI looks for patterns. And perhaps gives you a diagnosis or suggests you might want to go see a doctor, all the way through to that very high-tech remote monitoring that we're seeing, both in the clinical ICU type space, in care homes, but also just in everyday life. So a lot of you may have an Apple Watch, and recently Apple has actually got that registered as a medical device because it now detects abnormal heartbeats and gives you an alert to say, hey, there might be something here, you should possibly go see a doctor. So that kind of wide, early alerts, early information can be incredibly valuable because sometimes, things go under the radar. You don't know what it feels like to have a heart attack till you have one. And there's, just enormous potential to save lives from this. Another one that has been really exciting for me personally in the last year is the advent of robotic surgery. So one of the things we're seeing is that AI, and particularly VR combined with AI, is being used to help surgeons plan surgeries, visualize anatomy, do better training, and even get real-time feedback during the surgery. So it can go, you're a little bit close to this structure, maybe you want to check that out, or perhaps there is some anomaly that you hadn't spotted before that you might want to take a closer look. So these are just some of the very, wide range of things. We've also seen menstrual cups that can, check out whether your periods are behaving abnormally, heavier or lighter than usual. There are a whole host of things that are happening in the wearable space. And yeah, it's a pretty exciting time, I think.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I realize it's, when we say AI, it is such an incredibly broad topic. And there's, I think, as you painted, there's so many new exciting applications for it in health. And it seems like kind of the general overarching combination of them is that there's this ability to see patterns and identify patterns and be able to then apply that to kind of each individual scenario and make it personalized for the patient.
I should actually have added, because of course we both come from the legal tech kind of background. The biggest development, of course, is the whole ChatGPT thing that has been, going crazy. I should probably have started with that earlier on. But that's a different area. So all these things I've been talking about are very clinical, heavily medical applications. ChatGPT, I think, has this huge opportunity to revolutionize scaling healthcare and making it accessible to people, because it's not the data, it's the humanity of it. It's the ability for it to help people understand each other better, to understand all those medical reports where you look at them and you're like, I don't understand any of these words, to make that easier for people to see what's happening, to take notes for doctors. It's a whole human interface side of it as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. So now that we kind of have a broader context of AI in health, let's maybe go around the table with Rachael, Martin, and Aliya and talk about specifically the products that you're building with the companies that you're at. What do these products do? I touched upon that a little bit in the intro, but maybe to talk a bit more about what problem are you solving and how is AI actually involved in solving that problem. Rachael, could you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. So as you said in the intro, we've created an AI as a medical device called Derm, which analyzes images of skin lesions. So the problem that we're solving is really this capacity constraint, which we see over here in the NHS, but it is a global capacity constraint with dermatologists. We know that there aren't enough dermatologists out there in every health system, and the demand from patients is is really growing. We very much sit in that in the UK. We have a National Health Service. So we have a very finite, great resource, and we have some really great kind of pathways to prioritize patients that have a suspected cancer, to rule them out or rule the cancer in very, very quickly so they can get care quickly. And we also have other pathways where, patients who don't have a skin cancer or suspected skin cancer, inflammatory diseases, acne, psoriasis, etc., who can access dermatology to get some support from a specialist. Now, the challenge that we have in the UK at the moment, and I think we probably see this globally, is that the demand for skin cancer checks and cancer, melanoma is a very aggressive cancer. The demand for skin cancer assessments, particularly in the summer, is huge. However, the actual prevalence of the disease is relatively low compared to the demand. So there's about 600,000 referrals in the UK for skin cancer assessments, but only around about 15,000 melanomas and about 100,000 skin cancers in total. So that's a huge amount of time that our specialists are spending with patients to effectively rule out cancer. So what we've done is we've created an AI as a medical device, DERM, which takes dermatoscopic images of skin lesions and analyzes them, and then can screen, assess, and help triage for skin cancer. So depending on where we sit in that pathway, depends on kind of the impact that we can have on that patient and within the NHS. So the earlier we are, the better. We can really get that patient into the right pathway at the right time to see that specialist, so that then we can preserve our specialist capacity for patients who need them. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we do. And as you touched on, we've been in the NHS for the last 3 years, so we've worked with 8 NHS partners. So this is something we were founded in 2012. So we've been building the AI for a little while, but actually managed to get this into the hands of NHS clinicians around about 3 years ago. I'm working with 8 sites, and so far we've seen just over 40,000 patients in a real life, not clinical study setting, in the real world, impacting patients, which, you know, is incredible and why I'm here.
Wow, amazing. Martin, you're up next.
All right. Yes. So actually, as you mentioned previously, Nabla is building an AI assistant for doctors to help them save time and provide better care. Our goal is to improve the complete workflow of doctors, starting with the communication with patients. Right now, I say our most important and successful use case is the ability to generate clinician documentation automatically. Our main goal here is to really cut in half the time spent producing that documentation, and maybe more in the future from our first tests and like real world usage feedback from doctors. We got reports of time being saved being on the order of an hour per day, which is like actually huge, and also really we've been super happy with the really great feedback so far in general in terms of quality. And this is a use case that we've been studying for several years already, like before the huge wave of kind of buzz around generative AI, and we've only recently reached the point where we felt that quality was high enough and that we were confident enough to actually be able to release a product. So that clinician documentation part we've released a bit more than a month ago, and we already had great feedback, because I think most of our users didn't quite imagine that this level of quality was possible. So we are working very hard these days to make things even like easier to use, make the quality better, and also try to specialize a little bit, make it easier to tune what we generate for a specific medical specialties, and so on. So that's the key feature that we're focusing on right now.
So how would it, maybe a bit of a silly question, so how would it work? Like, is it recording the intake with the patient and then generating
exactly?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, the easiest way to use Nabla is actually to download a Chrome extension that you can use in our browser. If you go to nabla.com, you can get started in 5 minutes. And the way it's going to work is it's going to record a teleconsultation. So listen to the teleconsultation, transcript it, build a transcript automatically, and then use that transcript to generate the notes using AI. but you can also use it for in-person consultations. So even if it's not happening in your browser, you can also open the extension and record a physical consultation as well. And we do not keep any of the data that we process. So we just process it, generate the notes, and then the resulting documentation is yours to use.
Wow. I mean, in women's health especially, there's just such a demand. And I mean, there's women complain about, kind of their symptoms being ignored during intake, or there's certain bias happening when they see a general practitioner. I think if you can implement something at that touch point, it could be quite revolutionary for doctors.
Yeah, exactly. Today doctors often they kind of have to make a choice between having a very complete documentation or actually listening very closely to their patient, and sometimes they don't have time to actually do both at the same time. And that's why we think it's so important to save time, because we also believe it's going to make the care itself better.
Wow, incredible. Thank you. Aliya?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be here. So my name is Aliya Grig, and I'm the founder and CEO of Evolwe. And for the last almost 8 years, I've been working in the field of, and I would say, the intersection between neuroscience and AI and cognitive science, and that's what helps us to bring for AI and to train it to be empathetic and conscious. And we are actually a combination between a deep tech company and a business company. So in terms of our deep tech side, we are working precisely at the area of artificial consciousness. And here we integrated research from, and we have in our team specialists from neurobiology, creating a new type of architecture for AI. It's spiking neural networks. So we're basically trying to map human consciousness and trying to create artificial intelligence architecture based on this. And our second block in the deep tech research, it's psychometrics and psycholinguistics. So my big idea and big goal that AI can be empathetic only through understanding humans' language, because our language is a key to show our inner world model of the world and our perception, our motivations and beliefs. And we trained our AI to analyze users' text. So it can be like both like open data, it can be text in chatting with our AI chatbot, and through his text to analyze his beliefs, interests, motivations, his psychological profile and emotional profile. So based on this amount of different technical solutions, we create various products. And our core product, it's AI Sensei. So it's basically a combination between a personal coach, companion and a guru that helps you to grow both personally and professionally. And we have our core audience, young women who are either in the middle of their career or just trying to find out their path in life after graduating university. And we are also currently exploring I would say, a HealthTech area, because our sensei can, and that's what Melissa mentioned at the beginning, can analyze different behavioral and I would say psychological aspects of the person, and that can help to create this highly personalized not only like recommendations, but highly personalized way how a person can live healthier and longer. So we are currently working also on this side for our AI sensei. And also we have different B2B clients, and for them we provide, first of all, analytics in terms of like user, his behavior, again, his interests, his beliefs and his profile. And that helps to create, I would say, highly targeted campaigns, and to create, I would say, more personalized experiences, which of course can benefit both businesses and users. And I believe that of course there is lots of hype for the last almost like 6 months around AI with ChatGPT and all these solutions. But I believe that a next generation in AI will be empathy, emotions, and human-like interactions, because that's what's currently like all existing solutions are lack of.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, I think also what Mel, you said when you were talking about ChatGPT is kind of that it made the communication between the technology and the user more human, and that ultimately is kind of the bridge that was forged in the last 6 months. Actually, I did want to talk about that a little bit more, just because, I mean, there's all this hype happening, and I think a lot of people that have joined are trying to make sense of it, specifically in context of health. And, you know, people are kind of freaking out. It's like, should I start building AI today? Am I going to be left behind? Is my product going to be irrelevant that I'm building today in the next 5 years if I don't incorporate ASAP this kind of latest innovation? So Martin, given that you're the token CTO at the panel, but I wanted to pose the next question to you. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what is this thing called generative AI, just for kind of, again, general audience here, and actually what are the new opportunities that it can create for different entrepreneurs and builders in women's health?
Sure. So generative AI is, I mean, it's a pretty broad thing, but roughly speaking, I'd say it's the ability to process, like take some input, which can be, you know, anything. It can be human language, it can be, you know, visual data, sound, anything, and use it to produce any kind of output, which can be, again, it can be text, it can be images, videos, or any kind of data in such a way that you're like solving like a particular problem. And so typically the use case that that many people have heard about, like ChatGPT, the goal that you have for the generative AI model would be basically, you know, continue the conversation, like give an answer. But really, it's much more broad than just ChatGPT. And for example, in a sense, what Nabla is doing, you can see it as a specific instance of generative AI. It's like, give me a full, you know, consultation, and maybe, you know, maybe in the future, you know, patient history and so on, and I will generate like a clinical note. This is just like one particular use case. And so basically, it opens a whole lot of new possibilities, because it allows to solve problems that would be very difficult to specify in with code, you know, with just programming. Because if you want to, like, a generative AI can, you know, generate a picture of a house, for example, it's very hard to define with code what a house is. And so the reason that it's so successful today is you can take a very fuzzy problem, and just by having, you know, a lot of training data, you can train a model that's gonna do a pretty good job at actually solving the problem. And so for us, actually, in particular, it really unlocked a very strong, very hard problem that we had tried to solve previously with more traditional programming or more traditional machine learning techniques.
Amazing, thank you. Anyone else wants to expand or add to the definition of generative AI and what it can do?
Probably not expand to the probably not expand on that. That was a really great great explanation.
Maybe just I'm sorry, maybe just if I can maybe try to give a very quick idea of the way that generative AI can possibly work, you know, how a model can be built. I don't know if that's useful. I'm trying to make it like 30 seconds, but basically the idea is you have what we call the model, which is really you can view it as a big bag of numbers. It can be like billions of numbers today, you know, many billions in some cases. And then you have examples of the kind of data that you want to model. So for ChatGPT, typically it's going to be text produced by humans, and you're going to use this text to train your model to like predict what's coming next. And so typically you don't you have like a specific algorithm, which is a technical term would be a backpropagation, that is used so that you can see an example and then adjust the numbers in your model. And if you do that, many billions of time over time, your model sort of like gradually starts being able to solve the specific kind of problem that you had in mind. I'll stop here.
Oh no, thank you. That's super helpful. So there's
just to add, the thing that there is a lot of discussion recent days about threats of artificial intelligence, and regarding like that it can just I would say stop different professions, but generative models, that they can only provide kind of like I would say very basic information. They don't have creativity, they don't have any input that can be kind of like really creative or distinguishing. And even text, so for example, written by, for example, social medias by ChatGPT, you can really find out like who wrote this, a human or ChatGPT. They're pretty bad right now because they're just generating, they're not creating.
But yet it's interesting that it's creative industries that got hit, so to speak, first. We all thought it was going to be the boring automatable jobs, and then here it is replacing or augmenting graphic designers. It's quite interesting turn of events. We have a few questions. I thought maybe we can start answering, especially around generative AI. There's a question is, can you talk about the computing energy needed to produce generative AI? Or maybe even to frame this question as, again, like if you're looking to implement this, what is that going to be an expensive thing to do? Do you need to have a lot of computing power? Do you need to put a lot of money behind a project like this? And the question further goes to ask, I've heard that until Fusion is employed, we do not have the capacity for true generative AI.
I guess it depends what you define as true generative AI. I will say, just on the topic of sustainability, obviously, if you think about something like ChatGPT, it was, trained on trillions and trillions of data points, and it was trained over and over again. And it's not just looking at the text and learn from the text. It's also been then trained through something called reinforcement learning to be more human. So one of the things that's quite interesting about AI, and you see it in, AlphaGo, for example, is that it comes up with things that humans would not come up. It'll find those anomalies that fit in the rules, but humans would not actually think of that way for various reasons. But ChatGPT has been trained to only give responses that are more human-like, but also be more acceptable. So for example, if you ask ChatGPT about the best ways to murder someone, it will tell you that that's not a very good thing to do, and you should consider talking to someone if you feel that is something you're going to do. So they've actually tried to put in a sense of ethics into the machine. But all of that training is quite energy intensive, TensorFlow, they created chips specially to run these enormous numbers of maths calculations. And one of the things to think about is, as sustainability becomes more and more critical, both to the wider world and within the health system. So the NHS has a goal to get to net zero. The effect of training these systems is something to think about. There are ways to actually do this more efficiently. I think probably the others can go into more detail, but it is something to think about. It's not just a matter of just brute force your way through it.
And okay, so then if we get, practically speaking, if someone is looking to implement, I mean, I know it's hard to generalize because there's so many different, but maybe you can talk about your experiences, or you can contextualize it. There's so many different ways to implement AI, and what Mel, you've outlined, there's different kind of artificial intelligence, different sort of technologies that could be implemented. But what would you say, like in the first year of implementing AI, in the beginning, what are the most important things to get right? Is it to identify the problem you're solving? Is to hire the right CTO or a technical person? Is it to look at regulatory landscape? Like, what is it? Where to begin if this is something that you want to do within your company? Rachael, can you get us started?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll definitely answer that, but just going back to, you said at the start about generative AI, should I include it into whatever I'm building, the medtech device I'm building? And I think this kind of links into this next point, which is you've got to think about the problem that you're solving. AI and generative AI are tools, and you really need to think about, is that going to be the move the dial in the impact that I'm going to have? It might well be so, but I think generative AI is kind of having a bit of a moment that AI had maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not necessarily the step change in the AI world, but I think everyone is getting very excited about it, and probably the investors on here are as well. But I think it all comes back to, you have to think about the problem that you're wanting to solve, and the clinical utility of the product that you're building. So in the kind of that first year of implementing, I guess there's building and implementing two different kind of wheelhouses there. The building part, Neil, our founder and CEO, did for the first couple of years and did many versions of the algorithm. So I think building the algorithm is not my wheelhouse. I'll let the experts on here kind of talk to that. But what I can talk to is when you actually implement it, particularly in a clinical setting, you need to have a really good understanding of how it works. And that means its abilities, but also its limitations as well. And you need to really think about how you can test and validate that as well. What an AI does on a computer when you're running various different kind of training with it will dramatically kind of differ from how it performs in a clinical study. And then what we're also seeing is that the AI's medical devices that are out there, you build your device, you test and validate, you then go through into a clinical study setting, like, is this going to work in the real world? You prove it from a clinical study setting, then you go into real world deployment, which is the bit that we've been at for the last 3 years. And we're starting to see now in literature that there is a step down from the AI's performance, because when you go from a really robust, really straight clinical setting, clinical study protocol and pathway, and you put it in the messy world of healthcare, the AI is going to perform completely different. And I think that's something that you need to go in with the mindset that this is going to be a journey. It isn't a case of you've built an AI, it does a thing, and that's it. It's a constant learning process. It might be quicker than our learning process. And I think the advancements with generative AI and other AI techniques will expedite that, but you can't skip any of those processes, particularly if you're going into the medical kind of realm. You can't skip any of those processes. You need to validate, you need to test, and it's fine knowing what the limitations are. You can build in processes, just like humans aren't perfect. You can build in those processes, but you have to go into it knowing that that's what you're going into, not that you've built it, you've solved it, and on you go. I think is what I'd probably say.
Thank you. Yeah, great points. Anyone else? What's the most important in the beginning?
Yeah. I would add that it's really important to determine your business metrics and business goals in terms of like implementing AI. So, I mean, there is both like for product strategy, for marketing strategy. So, for example, if you plan to use AI for optimization of the marketing processes, it's really important like which metrics it will influence these AI tools or this AI implementation, and just try to estimate how much you need to invest into these AI tools and which benefit that it can bring to your team, to your business. And it's important just to be clear about all these metrics and about how it can make make an impact to your product and to your business. And another thing that it's important to kind of like brainstorm with your team. That's what I highly recommend to a couple of companies where I'm advising in terms of AI, is to brainstorm how AI tools can change your industry, can change your product, or it can benefit and optimize some processes. So I highly recommend to use these two approaches when you work on your product strategy with your teams.
I like that. Martin?
Yeah, just I really wanted to emphasize, I think Rachael made a very good point, talking about starting from the actual problem that you're solving rather than starting from AI, thinking like AI is gonna, disrupt my business and how can I, add it on top of my product or what I'm doing. And actually, like speaking from an example, I think we, even though we have AI pretty deep in our team DNA, we actually started really from the problem of saving doctors' time, and at some point we've known for a while that we wanted to make it easier to write documentation. We just didn't have a specific way to do it well, even with the previous tools from AI. And suddenly, not really suddenly, but over time, generative AI actually kind of unlocked that use case. And we decided to use it in a very specific way because we thought that it was actually a good fit for that particular problem. And if you don't start from the problem, and if you just look at ChatGPT, you might think about completely wild things like people are just gonna replace all doctors with ChatGPT, and let's do that and call it a day. And that's not happening. Not right now. Not for the foreseeable future. But there are many other ways in which AI can help, and you will only discover which ones if you think deeply about the problems that you want to solve. Whether it is better helping doctors be more empathetic, or writing documentation, or many things like that, because generative AI is really a very, very general tool, almost as general as programming itself in a sense. And ChatGPT is only one very specific instance of how you can present generative AI to people.
I like that. I like that it's as much a tool as programming itself. So you shouldn't walk around with the hammer looking for nails. Yeah, I like that. Mel, anything else from your end to add?
I was going to say, I really love that everyone is being very, very pragmatic about thinking about, should we use AI for a particular solution, and why, and how? These are all really important questions to ask. Just from a very practical standpoint, from having built AI systems, I would say that in the first year, you need to think a lot about infrastructure. So when you're training an AI model, it is, as Rachael said, it is not like programming. You do not write it once and then it's done. It's more like you're building an assembly line, and you're going to need to create a model, and then you're going to give it some more data and train it and tweak it. And then you're going to create another model, and you're going to do this over and over and over again, which means you need to actually you need to do programming for the infrastructure for all that model development. And that is a non-trivial piece of work before you think about that. So one of the things to consider is, do you have to build it yourself? Can you use someone else's model? Is there an open source model that you can use and start with, rather than trying to do things from scratch? And then the other thing to think about in terms of, how do you actually implement it, is around data collection. How do you build in your feedback loops? Because the whole point of an AI system is that it learns, and you're going to be having all this opportunity in your product to gather data. Was this a good recommendation? Was it a bad recommendation? Did the person really have cancer? And you want to be able to build that in so your AI gets better and better. So think about that when you're doing your design work.
I like that. I think the intersection between the technology or data science of it, the AI of it, and the user experience, starting what you were all saying about the problem and continuing into actually the loop of how the product interacts and learns. And what Rachael, you said about the fact that you can train it in a way, in a clinical or kind of a vacuum design setting, and then you put it out in the messy real world and things can change. And that's part of now the new user experience that you have to think about if this is the technology that you're dealing with. So that's really interesting.
Just a small note here, it's a new, I would say, even direction in AI about human and machine interaction and how machines are changing our interaction and our perception of the world, because we got used to, for example, using social medias and post some information there. So it's basically our, I would say, enchantment. And the same thing about AI is that it's starting to be our, I would say, partner in crime, and AI like a real companion, not only with whom you chat about some things, but with whom you can have deep dialogues, or who can optimize your content, or who can optimize information for you, or challenge even with this information. So it's, I would say, a new era and new epoch for, I would say, human machine interaction, how we can partner and work together.
I like that. Thank you. And from a data point of view, so if let's say you've identified that there's the problem for it, that this is the technology that is gonna be the one of the best, most effective ways to solve it. So how do you source data? How much data do you need to train an algorithm, or specialize an algorithm that you found out there? I mean, not everyone has the resources that OpenAI had, and they've spent so much effort, time, money to create what they created with immense amount of data points. But if you're, again, an entrepreneur at an early stage, where do you source this data? Where do you find it, and how much of it do you need? Aliya.
Here I like the answer of my CTO. The more data you have, the better you have your AI. So, well, of course, there is unlimited possibilities, more data you can feed in. And currently there is actually a new generation of AI and multimodal models, which can integrate both speech, text, video, images, and so on. So it brings a totally new direction and universe of AI development. But I would say for a start, well, it's not only about the amount of data, but also quality of data and how you aggregate, how you structure it, and how you do its estimation and then valuation. So, for example, in our case, we trained our AI based on over 300,000 of data sets of coaching, psychology, and so on, in order to train it to make it as a real coach and to be empathetic. And but it was only at the beginning. Then we continued to train it on millions and millions. But for an average start, it's also important to distinguish all these data sets and to structure them and to proofread them, because it really brings this value of your product. And especially if you are working in the health tech, where it's really important to provide a high quality of the advice and recommendation of the person, because it influences life, health, and so on. It's really important that you have great experts who bring this high quality of data sets and information, that it's really stable, and that you can trust this information.
Yeah, and presumably thinking about all of that is a fundamental building block of your infrastructure moving forward, and getting it right from all angles is extremely important to think about from day one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also about Melissa pointed out about infrastructure, because there are lots of costs for servers, for cloud, for computing, and so on. So and it's important to estimate, do you really need this, or you can use someone's API in order to develop based on somebody's API, because it will be much more cost effective and efficient for a business.
Right. Wow. Okay. Now, a big topic that already I was planning to ask, and there's a few questions in the chat and the Q&A about regulation. So where do you begin? What regulation can be applied to you if you're building an AI product in health. So not just an AI product, not just a data product, but also a product in healthcare, all of that kind of combined. And at what point do you need to start thinking about regulations that are going to be applicable to you? Mel, can you start? And then Rachel, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah.
Sure. So your kind of three big categories of regulations are going to be data protection, obviously. You have the new AI regulations that are coming in, targeting specifically AI, not just in healthcare. And then obviously, if your software does fall into the space, you might also be a medical device. And then you get to do the fun things that Rachel can tell you all about in terms of getting through that certification process. In terms of when you have to do it, GDPR and data protection obviously happens very early. As soon as you have data, you have those obligations. And the AI Act and the medical device regulations technically only apply when you're about to sell things, like when you're putting it on the market to use. But what you will find if you wait till then is that in order to comply with them at the point of sale, you have to do all the stuff that you should have done right from the beginning. And maybe Rachel can take over at this point to tell you about some of those fun things.
Yeah, I'm nodding furiously with you there, Melissa, and I'm glad you said that. Kind of technically it can be as you're about to sell and enter a market, but absolutely to your point of you probably need to do it earlier, because there'll be loads of gaps that you won't have realized you've got. And I think the earlier the better, and it's probably earlier than you think if you're going down the medical device. So I can't speak to the data protection and the AI, although data protection is really important. If you want to go into the NHS, you have to know where your data's come from and if it's been consented for. But with regards to actually, if you have the intention for this to be a medical device, and it's worth reading up on and getting expert advice on what is a medical device and what is not. I think it's a bit of a grey area, it feels like, but it's not when you speak to an expert who knows what they're talking about. And I think there's a lot more devices that we're seeing coming to market using AI that are sitting in this grey world of, well, really they are a medical device, but, you know, are they acting like one? That's something I definitely seek some advice on. If you are going with the intention to be a medical device, then start from day one with the intention that you are building a medical device. Things like QMS processes that you'll need to put in place. It's so much easier to build that from the ground up. And it's a decision that, you know, Neil, our CEO and co-founder, decided from kind of day one that we were building our device to the most stringent regulations. And that's enabled me to come in and commercialize and allow us to get into the market when we wanted to, because all of that groundwork had been done. All of those systems, all of those processes were in place, which meant that you're not retrofitting policies, processes, procedures to something you've already built and having to unpick. So I think if you're going in with, you know, with a want to get this into clinicians' hands or getting this into being a medical device, then you absolutely need to start early with the intention. And the kind of regulators that you need to be looking at for the UK, it's things like MHRA, the FDA, they're all catching up at the minute, but I think it's still a bit of a messy grey area. And I think, you know, that's honestly allowing cowboys to, it's becoming a bit of a wild west of people kind of releasing something and hoping it's okay. But I think if you really want to build something with intention to make a difference to certainly female healthcare or healthcare in general, then start early on and go into it knowing that it's, you know, it's a process and a journey, and seek expert advice.
I was going to say, if anyone wants to talk about what is or is not a medical device in more detail, feel free to reach out. It's something we spend a lot of time arguing about the fine details of, and it is quite interesting because the central regulations are fairly consistent around the world, but the exceptions, particularly around software, are completely different in each country. So it can get really complicated. Rachel's absolutely right. The MHRA and FDA have both flagged AI as things that they are going to be looking at regulating more closely. The FDA has released fairly recently, a guidance document all about how do you change your algorithms over time, because the traditional way of regulating a medical device is that you make the device and then you get it certified, you get your regulatory approval, and then you don't touch it again, because every time you touch it, you have to go through a whole set of processes and procedures in your quality management system. You need to go back and do user testing. You might need to go back and do very expensive clinical trials. And so the general principle for medical devices is you make it and you don't touch it unless you have a really big thing. But of course, that does not work with AI. The fundamental point is that it changes, it learns over time. And so the FDA has just released a draft guidance about how do you manage that? How do you make sure your changes still leave your device in a safe place, in a place where it's still effective? And how do you deal with issues around bias and transparency of the data? So it is something to think about. But yeah, if you want to do medical device, start with that intention, start early, and get your head around. It's not a quick process. It's
Wow, yeah. And reach out to Mel. I think that's
sure.
It does sound like a great area, and you do need someone that can kind of navigate that and also understand the technology. We do have to wrap up soon, although I feel like we could go for another hour. Honestly, this has been super insightful. I think we've had a really interesting crowd attending. I just wanted to mention before we wrap up 2 things. For all the startups, we're going to have an awesome webinar called Raising Your First Round for a FemTech startup. Kate just dropped the thingy to sign up in the chat. It's going to be sometime in June. So hopefully we'll see you all there. And everyone else, if you haven't heard, we're doing a conference in June called Decoding the Future of Women. We're going to have a whole talk and a panel on AI. Aliya is going to be there, so you can ask her more questions in person about the revolutionary things that she's building at Evolwe. And yeah, we hope to see you there. Kate is going to ping the link for that as well. And yeah, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone. Mel, Aliya, Rachael, Martin, thank you so much. We couldn't have picked better group of experts to talk about this from all different angles. I hope this was really useful for everyone in the audience, and it was definitely really useful and informative for me. So thank you very, very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great AI future, implementing your own solutions and using your creativity for AI for good.
Love that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Bye.